Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy has declared for the 2024 NFL Draft. And guys, he is a first-round lock. Book it. Why is that? We're going to tell you coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout and a senior draft analyst. And guys, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. But I got to kick this introduction over to my brother, my partner in crime, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Tiger Man, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we talk everything college football, we talk everything NFL football, but what, man, it all starts with the NFL Draft. So I want to say thank you, shout out to our everydayers for tapping in with us each and every single day as we're in prime season, right, of draft season, man. Playoff football is rolling, but we're also getting those last declarations, DP, and we're going to have a really good conversation. We're going to talk about J.J. McCarthy, right? We're going to talk about the reaction, right? What's the initial reaction? Where could he go, right? Then we're going to transition. We're going to talk about team fits, right? Which team should J.J. McCarthy go to? And then guess what? It's back. Coach K's key thought is back, man. I have a key thought that I want to bring to the listeners, to our everydayers, about how we should approach this draft process. I want to say, go ahead and hit the like button, because this is an action-packed show. We're gonna have a lot of good stuff to say. Hey, comment after every segment, and if you're not subscribed, go ahead, subscribe to the channel right now. But DP, before we get started, man, why don't you hit them with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50+ infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com and use the code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's JASE medical.com. J.J. McCarthy, listed at 6'3", 200 pounds, quarterback from Michigan, a guy that we were high on in the summer. Then as the season went on, we became a little bit critical, not so much of him and his skill set, Keith, but more so just how Michigan utilized him and how it made the draft evaluation just a little muddy, because it's not like watching Caleb Williams and watching Drake May, where you just see game after game after game, 30, 35 throws, and you get to see them kind of see different coverages, how they handle different things. Michigan didn't always do that, Keith. And for me, when I watched the tape, I can tell you my initial reaction, right, of him first, my initial reaction of him entering the draft. I think it was a good decision. And the reason why, it looks like Jim Harbaugh's leaving, right? So the coach that empowers him, the coach that he's so comfortable with, looks like he's going to the NFL. And unless he was going back and transferring, I didn't think going back to Michigan was the right move, right?
I agree.
Lacking of receiving. No, go ahead.
No, I'm right there with you. I thought that he should have either went to the NFL or transferred, but going back to Michigan was not going to raise your draft stock just to go run a.
It might have hurt it. It might have hurt his draft stock for 2025. Right. You know, they don't have a lot of receiving weapons. They have good tight ends, right? Colston Loveland, probably tight end 1 of 2025, but still, that's just one guy, right? Blake Corum's gone. You will have Donovan Edwards. So I'm glad that he's going to the NFL draft. Now, what for me, Keith, like just the rest of my reaction going through the film, I grade him as a second-round pick, but I'm predicting that he's going to be a top 20 pick, Keith.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't mind that, DP. And we talked about the conversation, right? You talked about QB4. So, you kind of pencil in Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, right? I'll be honest with you, DP. From the film I watched, I'm not saying that I have him ranked this way, right? Now, my quarterback rankings are coming out later this week. But I would not be surprised if you start to hear rumblings of J.J. McCarthy potentially being QB3. And the reason is this, that we know that the NFL, and it's a catch-22, right? Because it bites them so many times, is that the intrigue of something, right? Of the unknown part, right? And I think that people want to see that. Now, It's like, okay, well, y'all threw Michael Penix, who has way more experience and things like that, and the film is really out there. We know exactly what he is. So why are you throwing? And the reason I say this is that J.J. McCarthy is a good athlete. He can run the football also. So I think teams are going to look into that, right? And we have to remember, this is the same NFL that drafted Trey Lance top 3, right? That played for 1 year, and the 1 year wasn't
Zach
the
Wilson
last year
top
that he
2.
played. Right. Well, yeah, and I mean Zach Wilson, right? So I think that J.J. McCarthy is going to put himself, like you said, at top 20. I think it can be Caleb Williams, Drake May, and then it's going to be a battle. You're going to hear certain things back and forth, right? You're going to get into the arm strength conversation. Who has the stronger arm between J.J. McCarthy and Jane Daniels? Because you see some rips by J.J. McCarthy, man. Like especially early on in the season when they let him throw the football, like you see him rip some passes, and you're like, okay, this guy is talented, and I don't think his arm strength is adequate. I think it's good. I think he has good arm strength for a quarterback. I think he's mobile. Now the question is, like I said, which one of these gurus, DP, these offensive coordinator gurus, are gonna be like, you know what? I want that guy, right? And something you talked about yesterday, I think it was off. This was off the podcast, but you talked about the potential for the maturity, right? In the sense of the fact of you may get the vibe, DP, that he's a mature prospect also, as far as being in tune with his mental health and stuff like that, and how that bodes well for playing quarterback in the NFL.
No, 100%, Keith. They talked about on the broadcast how he meets with the therapist. Like, to take those steps as a young kid, as a young man, like that's big. To understand, you want to be as centered and as leveled as possible, right? The game of football is going to have highs and lows, peaks and valleys, but how you maintain yourself in the midst of that is important. And him understanding that is big. When I watched the film, like you said, Keith, I jotted in my notes as I'm, my scouting report will be on the draftnetwork.com. I said, good arm talent, like good, like it's not adequate. It's a good arm. He's got rips. He's got some, like, there's throws. I think it was the Michigan State game. That's probably his best game to me, where they let him get in true drop back sets. I'm talking shotgun, 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back, and it is straight drop back, throwing the ball, reading the cover.
And that's the confusing part, is that you see he can do it sometimes, and then they just take the ball from him. Like, you know what? We're going back to 20.
45 rush attempts in the second half, 0 passing. Right. It was like, Michigan, what are we doing? Like, they just make it difficult. But there was a throw. There was a couple throws actually, but there was one up the seam to Colston Loveland for a touchdown in that game where the linebacker, you know what I'm saying, he's working the seam. The linebacker turns his head to run with him, and he identified it really quickly, and he just whistled it right past his ear hole, right into a small pocket. And it's like, to be able to do that, right? I think for him, also what I appreciate from him, he's a really good athlete, but he moves and runs out of the pocket to throw. His eyes are downfield. He's not looking to just take off and get you 50 every time. He's moving, and he's kind of calculated in terms of negotiating. Do I go across this line of scrimmage? Do I chuck it downfield? Do I stop and trust that the protection got those guys back at the line of scrimmage? Like, I give him that. There's a maturity there for him that I appreciate.
Yeah, I want to cut you off real quick, but to ask you a question. What type of athlete do you think he is? Like, we had to place him in a bracket, because for quarterbacks, if they run a 4.9, we say, oh, he's a good athlete, right? But in a big scheme of things, it's not a good athlete, right? That's a good athlete for a quarterback. What type of athletic profile would you place him at?
I think he is. I think he's going to be able to run that 4.6, 5, 4.7.
Do you have an NFL comp of somebody that translates to, as far as?
I was thinking about that for a second. Oh man,
I
don't have one right now, which is crazy. I'm thinking.
Yeah, their body profile is very different, but I think he can get the same amount of yardage of like a Josh Allen, right? Just I don't think they're elite runners, you know what I'm saying? But I think he can walk away from a game with 8 carries for 70 yards, right? Something like that. I can. Yeah, I can easily see that as part of his profile. Now, I won't put him in the Lamar Jackson and those type of things, toting the rock. And then also, obviously, he's a much thinner frame, right, than a Josh Allen. But just the straight line speed, get away from defenders, stuff like that. Those timely runs that end up hurting you, and you look at the box score, right, and you're like, man.
He's got good pocket movement too, like elusive in the pocket, where you will see him evade free runners, Michigan State, he did it like 2 or 3 times where they ran twists and stunts. He evaded a guy, got out of the pocket, made a play. But just there's some pro stuff to his game, and I think he has the tools to be a high-level quarterback. Now, we got to talk about these team fits, though.
Yeah, let's get into him, man. We talked about who the player is, what we think he can be. But DP, you said top 20 picks, so we have to find some teams within those top 20 picks. Will it be a top 5 pick, or will it come at pick 20? But coming up next, man, we're gonna talk about team fits for J.J. McCarthy.
This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing later this week. As a senior draft analyst, guys, and it's being draft season, I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm jovial simply because it's my passion. I get to talk to you guys along with my co-host Keith Sanchez about the top prospects, the sleeper prospects of the 2024 NFL draft class. It really makes me happy, again, because it's my passion. It's what I love to do. It's my job and my career. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get those things off our chest. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Today's episode of Locked On NFL Drafts is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Do you want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy. All right, guys, they offer a reboot policy so that your entries stay within play, even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Right now on PrizePicks, I'm taking Lamar Jackson versus the Houston Texans this Saturday for more than 226.5 passing yards. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Team fits for J.J. McCarthy, Keith. And guys, for me, I think about a couple teams, right? Because his work in the quick game is good. You know what I mean? Taking the check down, taking what the defense is going to give him. You think about the Kyle Shanahans, the Sean McVay trees of Kevin O'Connell with the Minnesota Vikings, right? You think about that situation, but also here's a team. And that's why I say for me, top 20 is very likely. And I'm looking at 12 and the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton. I think he could be an ideal candidate right there. We know Russell Wilson is not going to be there in 2024. You're not walking into the season with Jarrett Stidham as your starting quarterback, right? Unless you are psychotic. I don't think that's going to be the case. Sean Payton, I'm especially with the leadership, the maturity of this young man, Sean Payton's going to look at him and say, you know what? This is a ball of clay that's going to listen to the coaching. And I always say, like, it's always just different dealing with a veteran compared to a young kid, because a veteran's kind of set in their ways a lot of time. Not blaming Russell Wilson, but that's just in life. From the regular job, you got a lawyer, you run a law firm, you got a lawyer who's been a lawyer for 15 years on his own law firm. Like, man, we do things a little differently here. It's hard to coach that into a veteran where you get a fresh guy out of school and he's like, man, I'm just listening. I'm a sponge right now. I think Sean Payton at 12, that's as high as I see him going. But Keith, I'm not going to lie. If Ben Johnson would have landed like Atlanta, I could see Atlanta at 8 as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, how high can he go, right? Because you have the Giants at 6, right, who obviously need a quarterback. Then you have Atlanta, and that's 6, right? That's right there. That's a top 7 pick, top 6 pick, right? And I wonder if somebody will take him that high, especially Atlanta's need for a quarterback, right? They're going to want to go somewhere. And I think it'd just be interesting whether he's QB 2, well, not even 2, but 3, 4, or 5, right? Depends on how high he will go, because I do think there'll be a gap. I mean, it's it's fluid. I mean, does New England take a chance on a quarterback, which pushes everything else up, right? So it's a lot of teams, DP. We talked about this probably a month ago, man. The supply and demand, right? The supply is not there and the demand is high. So I can see these guys getting moved up. But DP, I want to present a different conversation with JJ as far as team needs and team fits is, could this be a draft and stash guy, right? When we talk about potentially if he falls down the board, and we have to get into a podcast, DP, where we talk about the success of the Green Bay Packers, right? With their ability to draft and stash players. Don't rush them on the field, right? Even though there's pressure from the fans and everything, don't rush them. So we'll get into that conversation. But now you talk about the draft and stash model, DP, even if he falls out of those first, 15 picks, right? You have, well, not even 15. You got Minnesota at 11, Denver at 12, Las Vegas at 13. Prime real estate for him to go, right? Then you have the New Orleans Saints at 14, right? And that's my draft and stash model with them because they have Derek Carr. I think they have to bring him back one more year, right? Or do you look at Seattle, DP, with Geno Smith? I think he's coming back, right? But you put him 1 year behind Geno Smith, right? Then you get into potentially the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? You have the Tampa Bay Bucks as a draft and stash situation. So I just think he has made himself flexible enough, right? And the skills and the tools are there to where he's going to be attractive to a lot of teams. And we know this too, DP, that people like winners, right? Just flat out, people like winners, right? They like underdogs and then they like winners, right? If you're kind of in the middle, they don't really rock with you. You have to be a winner or you have to be an underdog. And people like winners. So we've seen it time and time again when Alabama was on their run, right? Like obviously players, their draft profile gets boosted up, right? Because you're like, hey, this guy plays in a lot of high leverage moments, X, Y, Z. So I expect some of the same things to get applied to J.J. McCarthy as far as a quarterback, and especially once he gets to pro days and he gets to the combine and you're able to really see him throw the football. I think people are going to say, oh, man, this guy really can rip it because, down the stretch, right? It was Penn State, Ohio State. Then you watched him play Washington, and you watched him play Bama, and it's like, okay, this guy didn't do much. But I think when you really look at the tools there, somebody's going to say, I wonder if we put him with a good OC, what he could do.
No, I think the Tampa Bay one is very interesting, Keith, because Baker Mayfield knocking off the Philadelphia Eagles, on Monday night. You know that he's going to get that. He more than likely gets at least one more year in Tampa. Okay, he's going to get at least one more year. And now you talk about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, a situation where I think he probably starts rookie year, where you can start Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky. I just don't view Kenny Pickett as the guy over there. So it's like you bring in a toolsy young guy, right? And I know some people are gonna say, DP Keith, why would you think that he is a first round lock over Michael Penix, over Bo Nix? There's not like the questions you have about him is the development of his game because he's a young guy with less experience in true drop back passing. Michael Penix is gonna have questions about his knees, right? And having to answer those things at the combine with his medicals, right? Bo Nix has started 5 straight years in college football, and there's still questions about his processing because of the style of offenses he's played in. Could he become something? Yes, but there's questions that are more risky with those guys, right? Because you ask and say, okay, well, do you feel like JJ is a little bit like processing can be inconsistent? Well, yeah, and that's because he's young and because of the reps how they were divvied up. I shouldn't have that question about Bo Nix as a 5-year starter, about processing information, about reading the field quickly, different things like that, right? I shouldn't have to ask that about him. There's enough tape to be able to answer that question. And I watched the tape and I still couldn't answer that question. So it's like with JJ, the unknown for him, it's just a little bit more enticing because you're like, man, if I could just get him the reps and get him where he needs to be mentally and seeing things post snap and everything like that, because he does have a little bit of a tendency to lock on his first read and stuff, but he'll come off of it if it's not open. It just takes him a little bit longer to just turn it down. I would say every snap for a quarterback in the passing game is a multiple choice question, right? If the question is 2 + 2 is what? It ain't 17. Scratch A off the list. It's not 17. B, if B ain't open and B says 12, scratch that off quickly. C says 4, that ding, 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 you got your winner. So I think with this young man, I think he's a first. I think he's going to be a first round lock, Keith. I believe that. I truly believe he's going to be a first round lock because at the end of the day, Spencer Rattler's going to have his questions. People going to hold the Oklahoma stuff and him being younger and all that stuff. You know, well, you were immature 3 years ago. It was 3 years ago, boss. So what do you want me to do? You know what I mean? Like they're going to hold that against him. It's something to hold against all the other quarterbacks behind JJ, and it's not much to hold against JJ besides the fact that he's young, a little bit unproven, but the development is so enticing that teams are going to say, you know what? Sign me up for it.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And the thing is that I hope with our listeners out every day is that, and the people that just tapped in for the first time, I hope that we're showcasing that we believe we do the stock up, stock down segment, right? Every week. J.J. McCarthy's stock is volatile, meaning that thing can swing all the way up and it can swing all the way down, right? And that's what we're trying to showcase, that we know a lot of people counted out, but we promise you, we think that J.J. McCarthy's draft story is just getting started. So, man, make sure y'all stay tuned to J.J. McCarthy. Make sure y'all stay tuned to us, man. Coming up next, man, is Coach K's key thought. And we have a key thought about these draft picks, man, these playoff teams, right? And what you need to do to go ahead and win your Super Bowl. I'm going to give you the outline for a Super Bowl. So coming up next, man, Coach K's key thought.
I know we come to sports to escape some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we talk for just a moment about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin in the middle and in the moment where we're dealing with so many different viral infections that's really making people sick at the moment, right? I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if my wife, my son, my mother-in-law, someone close to me were to get sick, while a supply chain issue was keeping them from having life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. This stuff can happen to any of us. Visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the cost. So it's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use the offer code locked on for $20 off your order. It's been a while, Coach K. It's been a while since we've heard one of those illustrious key thoughts. So, Coach K, what is your key thought of the week?
Well, DP, I obviously, everybody know I was coaching at LSU, right? Was there for some years, and then I made it the transition, right, to the NFL draft space, right, doing the media thing. And one of the first things I was hearing about was draft picks, right? Your draft picks are so important. And right as I made the transition, DP, that was a little bit into the Los Angeles Rams winning the Super Bowl, right? But to build that team, DP, the Los Angeles Rams, they offloaded a lot of draft picks, right? And the thing was that they were quote unquote, they're selling their soul to win a Super Bowl, right? They're leveraging the farm, right? They won't have anything else after this situation. The Los Angeles Rams, they predicted in 2021, the Los Angeles Rams will be drafting Caleb Williams at the number 1 overall pick. Les Snead doesn't have any idea what he's doing, right? And this whole thing will fall and be combustible and fail, right? But DP, I'm at home watching TV on a Sunday, mind you, a playoff Sunday. And who's in the playoffs? The Los Angeles Rams, DP. And my point is this. The Los Angeles Rams, did they win that game? Nope. But you know what they have? A Super Bowl, and they still have a solid team, right? They still have a playoff-worthy team. And that goes to my point is that once you get to a certain point, right, at roster building, I want teams to ask themselves, right? And if you're a fan of a playoff team, a team that has consistently kind of gotten to the playoffs, right? I want you to ask yourself, how many rookies are going to help me versus how many proven NFL veterans that know how to get the job done, right? And my point is that should more teams take the Los Angeles Rams approach and say, oh, wait, is that an all-pro corner? Here goes this second-round pick. Oh, wait, is that an all-pro wide receiver? Take my first-round pick next year, right? Because I'm not worried. Like, I think this, and this is the quote for this, DP, that when it comes to roster building, once you build a good playoff roster, too many teams are worried about tomorrow and they forget to win today. And that's the issue, right? And if you have a good general manager, he should be able to make those third-round picks, fourth-round picks, fifth-round picks into NFL starters to segue you into the next transition and the next phase of your NFL team. So I'm just trying to help y'all win Super Bowls, man.
Keith, I love that quote, right? Worrying about tomorrow, you know what I mean, can basically impact and stop you from winning today. You got to win today. And I think, you think about, remember when the Bears traded Khalil Mack? Now, at the time, we were like, well, they're trading him to a contender. Not so much, right? To the Los Angeles Chargers. Not so much. And, hindsight's 2020. But if you think about like a Baltimore Ravens making that trade, you think about the Buffalo Bills making that trade and landing him, right? The Kansas City Chiefs making that trade and landing him. You're like, man, like, so I'm with you, Keith. I think that teams, especially the back end of the first round, right? I'm all for going all in for the Super Bowl. I'm all for it, especially those teams. Their quarterbacks are locked into their contracts, right? So you're good there. And yes, you want to have those first round picks, but if you can tell me Lamar Jackson for going into the 2024 season, like you telling me he can have Devontae Adams because they traded the first and sent that first to the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah, I'm cool with that because I think it was Bucky Brooks years ago, before we did this pod, before I really got with the Draft Network, and he said you're not drafting all pros in the first round 9 times out of 10. If you got a chance to have an all pro, take it.
Yep, the back end of the first round, and this is the thing that all first rounders are not created equal. DP, like we're about to wrap up this draft class, right? And I think we're pretty close to evaluating most of the draft, especially the high end talent, right? I feel like we're pretty good with that spot, right?
Guys, yep.
And we don't have 32 first round grades, DP. And our scale, even at the Draft Network, right? We have an all pro level, right? A rare all pro level, and then we have a Pro Bowl caliber. Just with those, DP, it might just be 17 to 18, right? So when you think about it, you're not even trading a first round player. If you're picking at a back end of the first round, you're trading a second roundish grade, right? For an all pro or Pro Bowl type talent that fills a need that can immediately help you because he's already an NFL pro, right? And that's some of the things that I think about because I've seen so many of these teams, DP, and I think we're going to get into the Dallas Cowboys conversation tomorrow, right? Just as far as their team needs and stuff like that, but not just the Cowboys, the Buffalo Bills, right? And a couple other teams to where they become stagnant, right? In their growth, they hit a ceiling is because you know what wins out at the end of the day? Flat out talent, right? Like flat out talent. You have to have more dudes than what they have. And that's usually how it goes, right? Just go pull up the Pro Bowl or the all pro rosters, right? The Pro Bowls, the teams with the most Pro Bowls usually go to furthest in the playoffs, right? That it's that simple. So go acquire these high level talent, DP. And I just kind of want to have that discussion, just what our everyday is with you, and just a different perspective, because I think at some point, and that's what I talked about when I first entered the space, right? It was like, this was a written rule, right? That you have to go about it this way. And then the Rams didn't do that. And they also not bad. Like everybody said they were going to be bad, right? They're not horrible. So could that be a process for other teams?
No, and I think, Keith, and to kind of close it up, like a lot of times you see when certain teams zig when everybody else zags, that's the team that typically wins. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like you break the status quo, right? Like when everybody's chasing the too high single safeties, and you start seeing that one, not too high singles, but the regular, just the Ed Reeds. Like everybody wants the Ed Reed. It was like that for a decade and a half. Felt like, let me find that single high safety. Now all it took was one team playing the Kansas City Chiefs and saying, you know what, forget that. I'm gonna play 2 on the roof. I'm gonna play press man coverage, and we're gonna make you like dink and dunk. And you're gonna have to beat us by 1,000 cuts. And the rest of the defensive coordinator is sitting there like, man, you know what? That's a really good strategy, guys. I think we want to implement that, right? Because it's a copycat league. So it's always like that. When someone zigs, when everyone else is zagging, that person a lot of times becomes a trend center. You know what I mean? Set the trends and stuff. So I'm with you, Keith. Like if you're a team, especially if you're a team that's struggling to get over the hump, right? Especially if you're a team that's like, man, we're getting there, but we just haven't like knocked it out, right? The San Francisco 49ers said, oh, you saying Chase Young is available, Washington?
Let's go
Okay.
get him.
Like,
Yep.
we'll take him. Are we going to pay him? Who knows? But we're going to try and get the Super Bowl. We're trying to win the Super Bowl. So I'm 100% with you. If you do it right, man, you can go all in on the Super Bowl and you can win the thing, just like the Los Angeles Rams did. And then if you still do it right, you can still be in the playoffs for the contention of said Super Bowl a couple years after you win it, because the Rams are not one of the worst teams in the league. They're a good young team, and they're on the up and coming.
Yep, not for sure. 100% with DP talking about up and coming, man. I think we're here, man. We are here. The Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, man. I want to end this podcast just by saying simply, shout out to our everydayers, man. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. If you haven't hit that like button, go hit the like button. I told you, comment. If you haven't commented, go ahead and drop that comment. Let's have a conversation. I know y'all check the YouTube. We respond all the time, man. This is one of the fastest growing YouTube channels, and this is the place to come for the best NFL draft conversations. I almost messed that up, DP, man. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. But DP, man, listen, we about to wrap this thing up. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code, man. That is my co-host. That is Damian Parson, man. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers, man. We love and appreciate you guys. Listen, on tomorrow's show, what are we talking about? NFL draft scenarios. The Dallas Cowboys go under the spotlight. Who are some prospects that they absolutely need to draft and look at for the 2024 NFL Draft? We're going to tell you all that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.